Hello. I'm gonna make a video about what I do mentally if I want to stop worrying about the worst case scenario. A lot of times people fall into the habit of worrying about the worst case scenario of what will happen in the future. And I figured out a life hack specifically designed for this habit. It essentially makes it so that when you project yourself in the future, you don't have to worry about the worst case scenario happening to you. So essentially what you can do is that you can imagine living out what I did, is that you can imagine living out your life even right after you experience the worst case scenario. So imagine that this worst case scenario already happened and you're living out your life in accordance to everything that happens after this worst case scenario. How does your life look like when that happens? Essentially, when you imagine in detail how your life looks like when this worst case scenario happens, you could essentially have a better optimistic way of viewpoint or way of living. Where essentially you don't feel, let's say, like this worst case scenario that you fear. Let me see, because essentially your mind will already, because you already imagined it happen, your mind is already prepared or mentally trained for this scenario to happen. Essentially makes so that your mind is actually worrying less about this scenario, or your mind is actually less resistance towards what's going to happen in the future. So, essentially, imagining the worst case scenario, imagining your life in detail about what will happen when the worst case scenario happens is very beneficial towards me, because it makes so that I have power over my mind, I have power over what happens in the future, and I kind of make it so that what I thought would be harmful, but what I thought I was afraid of I'm not really afraid of anymore, because now I see how my life doesn't have to be a specific negative way if this scenario happens. So I did this process like years ago, I think.